Hey there everyone and welcome to another Near Monsters video. In this video we're going to talk about all the water monsters from 2021. So if you haven't seen the other ones, this is the final video of this year's series. I do recommend you go watch them through, starting off on Earth and going all the way through to this one, before watching this one, because I'm going to be rounding some things off. So this was up until the end of October 2021, any monsters since then I'm not including in this video. So this video has 4 sections to it. The first 3 are the normal ones, so I'm going to talk about water generally, some of the themes in the element. Then we're going to have the bulk of the video, which is talking about the new monsters. And this year was the year of stun protection, which I've actually got a slide at the end of this video taking a look at the new stun protection from this year. The third is talking about the power level, the notable additions of the new monsters, basically the interesting ones, what's going on there. And then finally, I've got a section summarising this whole year. So we're going to talk about some of the things that came in, some like the stun protection, going to talk about the power level of the monsters overall, that kind of stuff, some really interesting things to talk about there. And there's links in the description to get to all of those sections if you want to skip ahead, but you know, I'm obviously going to recommend watching it all. So first off, let's look at water as an element. So we got 3 new mythics, 3 plus 1 legendaries, that's because the 4th is shared with fire, and 3 new super epics. So 9 or 10 monsters this year, depending on how you want to look at it. I guess 10 would be better. Yeah, pretty good. In terms of water's, the monsters, how they have an average spread of stats. So if you look in the top right table here on the summary, if you're on your phone it may be a bit too small, but generally speaking, this spread of full attack, standard attack, round, standard defense and full defense, you'll see it's very top heavy on the high attack stats, and that is actually very close to the average across all the elements. So I've been banging on about how we've been getting high defense monsters this year, and that is very different to what we're seeing here as the average. This year, I can't remember exactly, we're going to talk about it at the end of this video, but there are a lot of standard defense monsters which came out, and you can see that's very different to where the average currently is. So yeah, it's very, very noticeable that things are tanky, and that's what's coming out. And even if we haven't had the impact of it quite yet, it will be impacting us over the next year or two. We're really going to feel it. So, yeah, anyway, that's a bit of a side. As for speed, water's just slightly faster than average. It's got a number of monsters which are pretty good speed. And you definitely feel that when you play it. It's faster than, like, if you play Earth or Holy and then you come and play Water. Yeah, it feels a lot faster. And then in terms of the types, there's lots of aquatics. As you can imagine, this is the element for aquatics. And then there's some beasts and reptiles, which interestingly, there's been a bit of support for beast and reptile type stuff, like where you actually want to be using them in your team. So a little bit more relevant than some of the things we see on the other elements. So looking at the first theme, we have the camouflage theme. Now, this is something that's been developed over the years, and I like it a lot. I think it's very cool to have a proper kind of stealth theme going on. We had the hint of that in Shadow, and then they just pulled it. They didn't give us any more proper stealth stuff in Shadow, which I was very disappointed about. I wanted to see more support there, and instead they switched it to Water, and so Water's slowly been getting more and more stuff. So on the left that we can see, this is just random stealth stuff. It's stuff that doesn't care about other stealth, it just happens to be stealth itself. There's a couple at the bottom there which I put as solo. That's because a number of these monsters care about Link, so these solo ones cannot be used with them. I thought that was important to note. And so anyway, the random stealth stuff, you can see 3 camouflage monsters and then just something with stealthy entrance. That's just how they are, you know. And then we look in the middle, this is the important bit, the stealth support, and also the next section, but stealth support monsters. So Walker obviously doesn't really care too much about it, but it does give you stealth support. A pretty big one though is this water hedgehog. So the water hedgehog doesn't really see much play. It's not a monster that many people turn to, and people would probably forget that it's actually pretty decent in this kind of setup. So in a Link Water setup, basically the hedgehog, it really needs to get a kill. And to get a kill, it needs something on low health or something, and then it can finish it off. And then it charges Blood Fury, and it can do that stuff. Now, the thing is that when it's not able to get a kill, there's not much it can do. What it can do, though, is LM Stealth All, which obviously in most teams doesn't matter that much, but if you're in a Link Water stealth team, well then that's excellent. So this is the kind of place which it actually really fits well, and I think Element Stealth was 100 seconds, I can't remember exactly. But yeah, it's a pretty decent monster for this, and supports the Link Water stealth stuff very nicely. Lilithia, it's worth noting with Lilithia, yeah, technically she's stealth support. She stealth singles on entrance, and I see a lot of, I don't know if it's just newer players or players in general, but I see a lot of people mentioning it and being like, oh wow, yeah, she's amazing for supporting sneak attack. Except that if you look over on the right hand side, these are the sneak attack monsters, and every single one of them gets stealth on entry already. Like, they don't need Lilithia, they get no benefit from Lilithia, and I think that is basically the case, is that most of the sneak attack monsters don't get any benefit from Lilithia. So I don't think she supports stealth as well as she looks. But that said, she does have Pure Cure, so she can purify them, which helps for some of them which can be poisoned. Then, you know, they need to stealth themselves. They can't actually stealth themselves because they're poisoned. So she helps a bit, but not as much as you'd expect. And then we've got Fiona, who she's just the crazy stealth support, because she's got Stealthy Accelerate, which on a camouflage monster, like, you know, if you look at these Tiger Senshi or Blue Maluga, better with Tiger Senshi, really. She can just half its seconds repeatedly by using Stealthy Accelerate on it over and over. That's crazy. Anyway, and then we look over at the next section, the support and stealth attack. These monsters, they can stealth your team as well as having the sneak attack stuff. So yeah, these monsters really fit into the whole archetype. And on the right, then we've got a couple of sneak attack monsters. Now, this maybe needs a bit more support to really get there as like a proper full-on Link Water stealth strategy, but I think there's a lot of very strong pieces here, and we're definitely seeing it come together. It's, yeah, very cool strategy. That's why I had to ramble on about it. So the next one is the sleep theme. I'm not going to ramble on this one. Sleep is very well established in water. You can see there's a lot of sleep monsters. Over on the left, I separated out some which have sleep immunity, so they could perhaps be used in a kind of one-on-one strategy. I personally haven't really found that to be that possible or effective. Maybe it needs a few more pieces for it. But yeah, sleep in general, there's a lot in water, and if you were to make a sleep team, I would say only dip into it a little bit. Like, generally speaking, if you go all in on water, sorry, all in on sleep, then you are just asking to be countered, because the counters are super harsh, and then it just shuts down a lot of your monsters. So you kind of want to just use a bit of it, and then use other monsters. So if you are in Link Water, basically any good Link Water team will probably have some sleep scattered throughout, and it's their kind of control, so they won't necessarily do stun or that kind of thing for control. They'll just have some sleep in there alongside whatever else it is they're doing, and that's how they'll win a battle. Lastly, we have the Detox/Poison sub-theme. Now, I put this as a sub-theme rather than a theme, because Poison is actually more now in Fire, Shadow and Earth. Water is like fourth most. Storm and Holy don't really have any poison at all, so I would really call it a sub-theme. But it has its own unique take on poison, where it uses it with poison immune monsters, or with things that have detox moves. So it actually wants to poison its own team, and then it uses that for benefit, or otherwise just doesn't take any negative from it. Atlantarine is kind of the epitome of this, which I've put between detox and poison immune, because it wants to be used with either one of those. Because it will poison the entire battlefield in a Link Water team, and then it wants to kill the poison monsters. So either teammates that don't get poisoned or that remove the poison from them, and then it can just kill the enemies. It's not the most incredible monster that really works in that way, but that's what it's trying to do. And then we've got a couple of poison sweepers over on the right. That epic one is a Link Water. But yeah, there's some cool detox stuff in here. So let's move into the new monsters. The first super epic is Crystal Worm Caerulus. I think I said that correctly. This I covered in the Fire video. At the beginning of that, I went through all the cycles, so I don't want to talk about it here, because it doesn't really make sense without looking at the other Crystal Worms. If you want to know more about it, then go watch that video. It's one of the better ones. It's actually probably my favourite of the bunch. For no enormous reason, it's just my favourite. Let's move on to the next one. So here, the first super epic to properly talk about, Shark Rex. This one is brilliant. I really love this super epic. It's one of my favourites to come out from this year. I've used it quite a bit. And I'm not sure if I brought out videos on my channel of me using my Crystal Worm team, but I use it in my Crystal Worm team, and it's like a crazy entrance control thing, and I use this for stun loops. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's talk about the monster. It's very much for PvP, as you can see by the tier list ratings. C in general and S+ for PvP. Yeah, way higher in PvP. So this is worth noting first that it has double defense. So its defense is actually like 5,200, which I don't know how well the community knows about how defense works. It's less about the number, more about the stat arrangement and things, but this is effectively higher than full defense. So it's not like the defense cap, but it's better than this having full defense stats. That's how tanky it is. And because it's low speed, which low speed, you know, not great, but it means it's got good health. So its health and defense combined mean that this monster tanks very well. Then it's stun immune with raw backbite. So this is a backbite monster. It's probably better than, I can't remember the name of it now. The Geomagnus? Yeah, Geomagnus. So historically, Geomagnus was one of the best legendaries for PvP because it gave you control over the battlefield by using backstab, which means you could backstab into shocking entrance monsters or just otherwise remove monsters which are not doing that much. Now, as PvP's gone over time, I'd say there's slightly less need for that because we now use a lot more monsters which are proactive on the battlefield. They actually are good in almost all scenarios, rather than being kind of like deadweight at times. But if you are using a team where there can be potential deadweight, backbite will generally make your team better. And Geomagnus was really good as well because it was stun immune, so if your team got really stunned, then those monsters are basically deadweight and would be better off dead, so you have more stuff to play with. And Shark Rex is exactly the same, except it's a tankier one. And it's lower cost, it's only 10 cost. So, yeah, it's a backbite monster that can be really effective in that way. It can also accelerate itself, which you basically do if there's a little bit of a window where you don't need to backbite or you're lining something up or whatever. And Piercing Blow, this doesn't do amazing damage, but it does surprisingly good damage. I would say it does about 3,000 or a little over 3,000. Yeah, I think it's a little over 3,000. So it one-shots fire monsters very well. Otherwise, if something's hurt a bit, it can kill them. At 200 seconds, you may be thinking, like, why would I want to use that move? But this is a super epic, so you can get it +9, so it's 170. And if it's worked out that you've accelerated it or whatever, like, it's then actually not too bad. It's just one of those things that's like a good move to fall back on, where if the other things don't line up or you desperately need to kill a particular enemy, you're like, I've got this piercing kill that just really effectively kills an enemy. So generally speaking, what you want to use this for is the backbite. You're using this in specific teams where you want to have that kind of entrance control. It's stun protection, and that is the thing I haven't mentioned yet, which I should be. This is one of the best stun protection options we've had at Super Epic this year. I really like it for that. I think it's just very effective. Because it's a sweeper as well as being stun protection. And yeah. The last thing to mention is the stun loop thing that I mentioned at the beginning. So you can use this with Glory Onyx very effectively by having Glory Onyx come in. Then it does swap for Moji, so it pulls itself back. Now normally it takes a bit of time doing this because the Moji takes ages before it gets a turn, sacrifices itself, the Glory Onyx comes back in. However, Shark Rex can speed this up, so you actually stun them faster than, basically push them even further out of play as you do it. And in the meantime, you charge Shark Rex, and Shark Rex can then kill off the Glory Onyx at the end, because Glory Onyx is like not the best monster. So it can stun the enemies continuously out of play, meanwhile charging Raw Bloodthirst on a Shark Rex, which you can have accelerated, so it's a stun immune sweeper at like 90 seconds. And also you have 2 other monster slots free to be doing whatever they like. So I use this in my Crystal Worm team because I charge the Crystal Worms at the beginning. They're then really fast sweepers, and then I have this stun loop with Shark Rex and Glory Onyx. And I use that to just stun enemies out of play while the Crystal Worms chew through the new enemies because they have 59-second Bloodthirst. It's very effective when it works. So there's some really cool stuff you can do with this. I absolutely adore this monster. I think it's a brilliant super epic. I was amazed when I saw this. I was like, wow, they made a really strong one here. But yeah, so let's move on to the next monster. I won't say anything more. So the next one is also stun protection. This one I think is a little bit weaker though. So Wavetail, it's a cool monster, and the most unique thing about it is it's got this Decree of Mercy passive, which means that nothing can sacrifice itself or teammates on the battlefield, so it stops backbite. More importantly, this stops cannibalized front lines, and that's what it's a direct counter to. Is there was a lot of, like, cannibalized has always been, cannibalized retribution front lines have always been a large part of the meta, and they've seen even more of a rise in the last year or two, particularly from the crowd who are on Discord. They kind of have been sharing like, oh, this is really powerful front line, and so a lot more people have been using retribution front lines. So Wavetail completely shuts that down because it stops them from killing one of their own team right at the beginning to then charge all the retribution moves on those monsters' first turns. Other than that, though, it's kind of a little too weak, I would say. It needs a lot of things to line up for it to feel good. Primarily, you need Union attack, so you need to use this with birds so that it has a decent damage move. It's not the best damage move, but it's like decent enough that it will do something on the way to the Drain Survivor, because Drain Survivor takes quite a while to charge. People have talked about using this in 1-on-1. I do not think it's a brilliant addition for 1-on-1. It's fine there, but like again, it restricts you because you need birds, and yeah, Strata Strike's a bird, but like this is not doing enough in 1-on-1. I don't think. And yeah, the other parts of the moveset are very interesting. Send back is a good move to have because you can't like backbite or something. You can still remove a teammate that you don't want to have there with send back. Forgive is good for like messing up with the blood moves, but you can see here it's a bit situational. It's like send back can be good in some scenarios. Forgive can be used in some can be good in some scenarios. Drain Survivor takes time to charge. Union attack requires awkward team building. It's like, oh, and Decree of Mercy, that only matters if you meet some team that cares about sacrificing their monsters. So for me, there's a lot there that it can be alright, and in some battles can be very good, but I think personally it's not as strong as other stun protection options, and not the best thing to build around. But yeah, cool addition for this year. I definitely like the artwork. It's very pretty, and I do like meeting it. Because it's fun to play against. You do have to worry about the Drain Survivor that comes in the end, and it's nice that they made it very tanky too. So starting off the Legendaries, we have Abyss Soldier Poseidon. Oh boy, this one, I left it from the fire video to talk about here, and I wanted to take quite a while talking about it, but at the same time I don't want to make this video really long. I've already rambled for a few minutes on those first monsters. This one has been wrecking PvP for a while, but I want to say, I don't know if it will be changed, and so I don't want to talk at great length because it may be that what I'm talking about here is not relevant because they'll change it. But what I do want to say about it is I think this was an amazing addition for the game. If you don't look at the broken or strong parts of it, I think this is brilliant because it was a stun counter that everyone has access to. So this is in the shop, and you can buy it for 12 tickets. One of the big things I was asking for in the past was like for them to put a stun counter monster in the shop, or otherwise just give us like easy access to stun protection. And this is one of the additions that came this year that is really big for people's overall, for everyone being able to deal with stun, even in the earlier stages of the game when they haven't picked up really strong stun protection, because everyone has access to this. So it does rely on using with the other Abyss Soldiers, which they put into the rare egg pool and the standard egg pool, I think, pretty effectively, so you can get most of them there. What this monster does is support the Abyss Soldiers brilliantly. Now, the Abyss Soldiers are obviously limited in power level. They're super epics. A lot of them are not that great, and they also get this benefit when they're used alone. So not looking at Poseidon, just looking at the Abyss Soldiers in general, generally you want to just use them by themselves in teams where they have the stats boosts, so they're like better than Legendaries. They just have slightly weaker movesets or whatever. But when you use them with Poseidon, they're then good enough to actually see proper play. So this gets a ridiculous buff when it's used with the other Abyss Soldiers. It gets triple attack and defense. Sorry, no, triple defense and camouflage, which means it's really hard to take out. It also has a stun counter, so use this with one other Abyss Soldier, and you've got pretty effective stun protection for your team. For say PvE, if you're a newer player, that's something you can actually be using as effective stun protection, rather than one of the other earlier tools which you get. So as the moves, it can give turn to another Abyss Soldier pretty rapidly, every 70 seconds, and it's got a kind of better retribution. It's a piercing retribution, and then it can summon Abyss Soldiers. It summons a random one, and because they're all solo, that's not a move you want to be using, really. It's a kind of in desperation, or if you want the buff back on Abyss Soldier Poseidon, that kind of thing. Because if it comes in as an element which you already have, then that monster may just be deadweight. And if it comes in the same element as Abyss Soldier Poseidon, well then it's really bad, because neither of them can really do much. Poseidon can just like give turn to things. So this can be either water or fire, because, like I said, they're all solo, so you pick the element that you're not using with the other Abyss Soldiers. And what it generally gets used for is really horrible stuff, because there's Abyss Soldier Mist, the water one that you can. It has camouflage as well if it's with other Abyss Soldiers, and it has sneak attack, so you can continually give turn to that every 70 seconds to sneak attack multiple times. You've got the holy one, the anti-stan, which can give turn to things, and so this Abyss Soldier command can only give Abyssal command can only give turn to another Abyss Soldier, but if you give turn to the anti-stan, that can then give turn to anything you like, and so that effectively together it takes two monsters to do it, but they can every 70 seconds give turn to any monster of your choice. So there are various really powerful sweepers like Aurelius, or people love to use it with Kuramasa. Geocosma is also actually a pretty good one for that, and they just repeatedly give turn to that to then sweep through a lot of the enemies. And this kind of stuff is really hard to stop because Poseidon is so tanky. Now, I think this is actually a big reason why people should be using the really high damage attacks, which can deal with some of these defense buffs. Yeah, but I'm not really going to say too much more on this, other than, yeah, you can use it with a couple of the horrible Abyss Soldiers. I don't know if they're going to change things so that it doesn't have this like really nasty combo stuff. They may slow down the give turn move, they may make it not possible to use at the beginning of a battle, that kind of stuff, to just stop the horrible front lines that have been really annoying people in PvP lately. So let's move on from that. Let's talk about the next legendary. So the next one is Shiny Bane Dragon. This one is much less, it's a much safer monster. So this is just a fun spin on the normal Bane Dragon, where the main change is rather than it poisoning everything when it comes in, it just poisons the enemies. So this is quite unique. We have this effect on a fire mythic, I cannot remember her name right now, but she comes in, she stealths your whole team, and she poisons all the enemies. This one doesn't stealth your team, but actually that would have been really nice for like a Link Water camouflage team, if it's stealth your team as well. But anyway, I'm going off on a tangent. It has a slightly unique version of it, which I would say is generally better. You know, poisoning your own team can set up enemies' moves, it deals with, messes up with your whole ground. And then the secret skill got improved as well, so rather than being instant stun killer, it's instant stealth bane. I'd say that comes up more. It's also good because double poison eater is like a dual hitting move and stuff, and so it can be interrupted by stealth. So or like say they use purifying mist or something like that, and they remove the poison, and then you can't really do much nicely. You can fast strike, but like the instant stealth bane can do more. In that case you can do instant stealth bane and then fast strike or something like that. It also got counter strike, which is a better move to have. So overall, like a decently aggressive moveset, but it's not the strongest monster for the same reasons that Bane Dragon isn't. And that's because it's slow, it's got low defense, its sweeping moves like double poison eater and fast strike, they're high seconds. So it can come in, have a very minor impact with its entrance, which can be good depending on the situation, and then when it gets a turn, it does quite a bit, but then it doesn't do anything for a long while. So like it's fine, but lower power level compared to what we want to be using in PvP and PvE too. The next monster is Cephalogunda. I think that's how you say it. I I'm not entirely sure what this is trying to be. It's like some kind of octopus thing. It is so cool art. I love this kind of art where it's like some crazy creature. It interests me so much more than the waifu. But anyway, the monster itself, this I rate a lot higher than other people do. And that is because I think it fits into quite a few archetypes very well, that you can fit it into a team and it will function brilliantly if you've got the other stuff around it. Now, for that reason, it's somewhat of a build around, but I think it fits into enough that I want to kind of put it high. But anyway, maybe I'll put it a little bit lower over time. So, nice thing about this, it's come out in 2021, so it had max defense, or full defense, sorry. Full defense stats, and it's a bit slow, but it's very tanky, and it has foggy entrance, so it stealths when it comes into the battle. And with poison immunity means that the poison won't get rid of that stealth immediately. So it's probably stealth with massive defense when it comes in, and then when it gets a turn, no matter what's happened to it, it can instantly get a kill, and it's a kind of pseudo piercing kill because it can instant stealth and then venom sneak attack. So yeah, this is quite nice. It really helps the stealth strategy, as I went on about that theme at the beginning of this video. This supports that really nicely with a foggy entrance. It also fits with it because it can only stealth itself from the entrance and then one time with the secret skill. So after that, it needs to be stealthed by teammates, but it doesn't need to be purified at all because it's got poison immunity. So it does very easily work with that. So it kills things very easily with venom sneak attack. Otherwise, the poison chomp does good damage, and that's the other aspect of it, is it fits in with poison teams. So poison isn't like a huge thing in water, but it does have the detox type stuff, so it will fit with that kind of archetype going on. And it can, poison enemy, the poison chomp does good damage there. It can detox stun, which is more niche case, but it can do a bit of control if you need it to. And yeah, I think that this fits, it bridges the gap perfectly between stealth and poison, that you can fit it in with those things and then it should perform very nicely. There's not a whole lot more to say about it other than it just, it's got a nice mixture of stuff. It kind of reminds me of Glaceron, which Glaceron is a slightly unassuming monster in that it's kind of a sweeper that does some other stuff, and then when you actually use it, it often works out really well because it's got these different options of things to do, and just slightly, like, oh, it can hit around protectors and that kind of stuff, like Venom Sneak Attack can hit around a protector and poison it. Yeah, like, there's some cool stuff which Cephaloganda does that I think should mean that it does a lot better than you think it would. Next we have Garden Fairy Pyrus. Now this I talked about in the Fire video when I talked about the cycles, and it's mostly for use with the other Garden Fairies, so I won't really talk about it here much. I mean, looking at it, basically, this is kind of more support for the other Garden Fairies. Vigor Chrono Breaker can come up, like, there's lots of Chrono monsters, but if you get put on low health, all this monster can do is counter shock, and that's not good enough. So I would say don't really use it outside of Garden Fairy teams. It's just for use in Garden Fairy teams, and I talked about it and I hyped it up in that video, so go watch it there. Now we move on to Mythics. The first Mythic, oh my god, I love this monster. So this is way better than I thought it was when I first looked at it, and I thought it was good when I first looked at it. So what makes this impressive is the oust move is so much stronger than you may think. So this comes in, gets camouflage, gets shield, which means you can't really use it in the front line. But camouflage and shield means it's really hard to kill, and because of its high speed, it's like most of the time impossible to stop before it gets a turn, and then it can get a kill like just very easily. So this is like a tanky sweeper. Well, tanky is in like difficult to kill sweeper, and the moves on it are all quite efficient for their in seconds cost. So if you use this in Link Water, like, you don't have to use this in Link Water, but it's better in Link Water because then it can use Link Sneak Attack. Because remember, of course, it comes in with camouflage, so it's constantly stealthed. So then it can just kill whatever it likes, hitting around protectors and stuff with the Link Sneak Attack. It's not piercing, but you can kill whatever you want every 100 seconds. And then Oust and Exile, these come up basically in the times when something has a shield, something has hold ground, that kind of stuff, which you'd be surprised how often that comes up. That there's a monster that you really need to kill at that moment, and it's got like defense buff stuff on it that mean you don't want to link sneak attack it. Like it could be an Overwatch thing with hold ground and that kind of stuff. Like, and then oust and exile very effectively kill it. And you only need one kill, and then you have Blood Fury. So I use this in the second form. And I think most people will have it in second form rather than the final form, and there it's got Bloodthirst rather than Blood Fury. But I think it's a very worthy note that this has Blood Fury in final form, which means it's less reliant on this Link Sneak Attack. It can just do any of these moves: Exile, Oust, Link Sneak Attack, Protector Conversion, and then it's got that kill, and it can Blood Fury from there. And having it in Link Water just means that you've got this faster killing move with the Link Sneak Attack. Protector Conversion also very relevant. Because this is so hard to stop from getting its first turn, if you've got some deadweight on the battlefield, which you really need to get rid of, Protector Conversion will do that for you so effectively. I think it's one of the more important things to have in PvP these days. We talked about Backbite earlier on Shark Rex, and how you'd kind of put that in a team when you're building around it. It does come up though, and is very useful at times. Protector Conversion on this monster, I think, is very, very good as an extra addition, and you should not underrate that. These are the main reasons to go for the Awakened form. The second form is brilliant, but the Awakened form, you only need one kill for the Blood Fury. You don't have to use it in Link Water, because you don't really need to rely on the Link Sneak Attack move, and Protector Conversion to take out a deadweight monster from your team is so good. The monster that's created is also the Auto Protect monster, so it's immediately protecting. And of course, having a protector with then your camouflage shielded monster behind it is very hard to deal with. So it synergizes beautifully with itself with that stuff, and yeah, is very strong. I think it's one of the best sweepers for PvP in the game, and yeah, very good. I'll go on. I'll go on to the next one. So next we have Lyra. This I also have as S in PvP. It's very strong. I personally don't like it. It's not my kind of monster, so I want to say that first because it may bias the way I speak about it. But what this does is passes time when it enters, and then basically instantly gets a turn. So it's really, really low speed. However, when it enters, it pushes back everything else by 80 seconds. So it actually gets a turn in, I can't remember exactly, but it's something like 2 seconds or 4 seconds, something like that. So practically roaring entrance. And then basically it uses Mermaid's Hex. Like, that's the main use of this monster. Mermaid's Hex, kill an enemy of your choice, replace it with a useless protector. It can then open enemy teams up for stun pretty well. Better than just killing an enemy of choice, because it's not bringing in the next monster. It's really slowing down the enemy team, and people will like say, have stun protection there, then they'll have maybe some more stun protection behind, so removing that one thing without bringing the next stun protection can open enemy teams up for stun. I'm mentioning that because people always go on about how this is amazing for setting up stun protection, stun lock. I don't think it necessarily is, but other people say it, and I'm not going to discredit it completely. But yeah, so killing any of your choice and creating a protector, I think the strongest part of that is actually giving access to true hit. Because then if you've got true hit monsters around, you can just be ignoring that protector and kill off the other things. Yeah, it's very strong in that aspect. You do need a bit of time to pass before you can Mermaid's Hex, so you can't use this in 5th slot very easily. It's more kind of a mid-game monster. I really like it for that aspect, because we don't have many monsters that want to be in the mid-game, and this is the kind of cool mid-game monster that can come in and have an impact almost immediately. And in the mid-game too, I think it can be nice if you have some monsters with survivor stuff further to the front, and so a bit of time has passed by the time Lyra enters, then Lyra comes in and then passes 80 seconds more, so then suddenly survivor may be charged. So I think it's got some cool synergy stuff there. I talked about this quite a bit in top 10 Mythics that I did last year. So I talked about all the combo stuff in that. I don't really want to go over all the combo stuff again. I've talked about a bunch of the different aspects. All I'll say is that there's one combo which I can't remember if I mentioned in that, and I think it's probably the strongest way to play Lyra. Not trying to do like some stun lock, not necessarily trying to do the creating a protector and then doing true hit. I think a really powerful aspect of this monster is that any monsters you have behind it in the team that enter at the same time as Lyra actually don't get affected by her entrance. So what you can do is you can construct your team, say a front line that then kills off its own monsters like multiple at a time with, say, Bomboid or something like that. Or just generally what you do when you put Lyra in your team is you put some monsters behind it that are low speed but have a really bit powerful impact when they get a turn. So that if Lyra comes into the battle at the same time as those monsters behind, they basically have roaring entrance too. I think that's very strong and a sort of underrated aspect of her that doesn't get talked about enough. If you're ever facing Lyra, do not bring her in at the same time as other monsters. If you see her next in line, kill one enemy so that just her comes in, because otherwise you're going to be really wrecked by it. I'll just say one combo which you can do with that. Kureo Kami has the avalanche skill that will kill all your teammates and all enemies, and so you can do that. You can time it so when Lyra's next, you then use that move, and then they all get roaring entrance on your team, and all the enemies that just came in, they're all pushed back. So don't get that. Anyway, some really cool stuff you can do with Lyra. Not my personal favourite. I would probably go down those routes of the true hit, or like I just said, with the multiple entrances at a time, if I were to use her. But some people just go for stun lock, and that's what she does. The last mythic is Ophidiator. Now this one was added in the anniversary. I've got the least experience with this monster in terms of meeting it and seeing it, but it's very cool. So this is like a more modern version of Suikenshi. Suikenshi, I would say, is generally a little better, but in the long run, Ophidiator may actually end up being better. So this, I have kind of in the middle tiers of PvP. The main issue with it is that it does require reptile stuff to be used, and also nothing is super fast with the moveset, but if you use it with reptiles, it's very, very strong. So with reptiles, it gets attack and defense boost by 50%, so then it's ridiculously tanky. The attack boost actually doesn't really matter at all, but the defense boost there, making it really, really tanky, is great, and it can hit around protectors because it gets focus too. So then it can just repeatedly Union Slash anything you want, so it can just kill its way through the enemy team. If you set the enemy team up with protectors, this is the kind of monster you can use to just destroy the enemy team. So with Suikenshi, it works beautifully. They are both reptiles, so Ophidiator gets the boost it needs, and it can do the Union Slash, and they can both just then bypass protectors and keep killing the new monster that comes in. Suikenshi is solo for the Blood Fury, which doesn't really work with Ophidiator, but it works nicely in those Rocklock kind of strategies. And otherwise, just with reptiles, having Union Slash and Slayer Break, two very powerful moves for that, and then it can double Bloodthirst later on as well. So the Baby Summer move, this recently got a very big buff, so the babies come in with proper stats, and so they're actually reasonably decent monsters. It's a good way for keeping this union going on. They're quite strong, but like not amazing. I don't really know what more to say about this monster. Basically, it's a tanky Suikenshi, but doesn't have stun immunity, and that's and is a little slower with the moves because Union Slash is at like 130 seconds. It's got double Bloodthirst, which is 160 seconds. And one more thing to mention is Nagandia is actually very, very good with this. You can use all three actually, Nagandia, Suikenshi, and Ophidiator, because Nagandia is a reptile, so it gives the union, and Nagandia can petrify an enemy, turning it into a rock, which sets up this kind of strategy of bypassing the rock, and Nagandia then wants to use that rock for Wrecking Ball. So if you have teammates that bypass rocks, then it means that she'll be able to get to her next turn and do the Wrecking Ball, rather than the rock being killed by a teammate in the meantime. Really cool monster. I've heard some good things about it. I may be underselling it a little bit at this point, but we'll see. So now we move to section 3 of this video, where we talk about the new monsters, where they fit in, how strong they are, notable additions, and here are the notable additions. So these are my 3 which I picked out, which I think were the most interesting. So Shark Rex, I talked for a few minutes on that. I think it's a really powerful stun protection. It's super epic. It's doing it in a way that Geomagnus did, which we have not seen properly for quite a while, having the stun immunity with Backbite, and on a tanky super epic is just amazing. I think Cephaloganda is very nice, the way how it fits in with Detox, Poison and Stealth. I think there's definitely teams which can utilise it very well. It's not the most exciting or incredible monster, but it is very much fitting in with the modern style, where it is tanky, but still does good damage, and yeah, the archetypes around it very cool. It's the second or third, depending on how you want to look at it, Foggy entrance in the game, and that's a very nice passive to have. And then we have Lyra, which I didn't talk about the passing time combos in this video so much. If you want to see me talk about them, I'm pretty sure it's in the top 10 mythics in the game video. I'll link that in the description so you can find it, where I talked at length about the different things you can do with it. Basically, it's a very combo-y monster, so you can talk, for a while on that stuff, and I didn't want to get into it in great depth there. But for people who are interested in that, I think it's quite a cool monster for them to mess around with that. So in terms of the strength of these new monsters, here you have the tier list additions, and you probably heard it as I was talking about the monsters. I really like Shark Rex. I really like what Abyss Soldier Poseidon and Cephaloganda are doing. These are the kind of the stronger ones. And then the Mythics, I think we got really strong, solid Mythics this year. Ophidiator, I'm not entirely sure where that's going, but Christine and Lyra, they are both definitely very strong compared to the other monsters. I don't know if watching these videos whether you can gauge perfectly how strong Mythics are. I talk about the Mythic and I'm like, oh, it does this, and oh, this is strong stuff, and then I'm like, yeah, and it's in C tier. Or I talk about these monsters and saying they're strong, and then they're in the middle tiers, but I hope it's pretty obvious when you look at monsters like Christine and Lyra, how they're just a step above, in terms of they do things which just win you the game, or are so powerful on the battlefield, so reliable, that kind of thing. And yeah, anyway, so the Mythics that we got in Water this year, very strong. Overall, we got good support in Water this year. I really like some of the additions, and I'm sure that's come across as I've talked about them. So now we move to section 4 of this video, where I'm going to do the overall summary of the year, and we're going to start that by talking about stun protection, because I talked about this year as being the year of stun protection. Well, this screen really shows it. There are so many powerful stun protection options that came out this year, at all different qualities. So we're going to just basically talk our way through this. So on the left hand side, you'll see there are stun absorbers. These Disikian, yes, it was in the game already, but it got redesigned this year to have stun absorber, and it's also in the shop, so anyone can have access to this. Similar to Abyss Soldier Poseidon, which I said, in this video, how everyone can get access to these stun protections in the shop. That I think is incredible for newer people. If I was starting the game now, and I would realise at some point, I need good stun protection. I've got some options, but they're not the best. Having access to either Poseidon or Disikian would really help me out. And so yeah, I'm very happy about that. So these stun absorbers, Disikian's a good one. What's her name? Jasmine, Gun Fairy Jasmine. She's a very, very strong one too. Great in PvE especially. And then you've got an epic and a super epic, which they're not the strongest, but we're talking about 4 new stun absorbers. Then we go down to stun martyrs. Stun martyr is, I would say, better than stun absorber. I was going to say arguably better. It's arguably better, but I would argue it is better. For the reason that if something gets stunned really far into play, generally it's a bad thing. It's kind of the weakness of stun absorb, that you need them to be doing something. And so that's where Disikian is a good stun absorber, because it still shields the team. Jasmine doesn't have that, but Jasmine is so powerful when she gets turns that it makes up for it, really. So these stun martyrs, they're very strong. I went on about Joker Dragon in the Earth video about how I think that's better than Spectre Fox, and yeah, it's a very strong one. You can build around it in strong ways. Magma Gund is limited to Link Fire teams. Super Shell is limited to kind of things where there are plants. So they have limited these monsters where you have to build around them a bit. But I think that's good. You know, we don't want just like slam dunk every team kind of stun protection. And so yeah, some nice stun martyrs which you can build around. Then we've got stun bisectors. We've got 2 of these. This is a new passive that we never had before, and very, very strong. I think it's stronger than having a stun absorber in your team, halving the amount of stun on your team. If you have both of them on the battlefield, or you clone it or something like that, yeah, actually, even if the enemy has it, because it stuns it for the whole, halves it for the whole battlefield. If you have a stun bisector, they have a stun bisector, then it's 1/4 stun. If you have a stun bisector and a stun absorber, your stun absorber will get stunned by half the amount. So it's very powerful in that way. Not, compared to stun absorbers in the past, they used to all take the stun together and stuff, and it was just punishing, really, not doing what you wanted them to do. So these stun bisectors, they also are limited in their use. We've got one for poison teams, we've got one for Link Earth or Link Fire teams. Very nice to see, and I hope they continue with that trend of making these kind of strong stun protection that can only be used in certain teams. Next we have stun counters, and this is where they kind of went different to that. So Poseidon, we've already talked about that a lot, and Momo, that can be used in any team and is just ridiculously powerful. I think they kind of messed up with Momo. They didn't need to push it quite so hard when they buffed it. We'll see how that goes. But something I did want to say about these stun counters is we've got 2 in the last year, and that may not seem significant until you realise that in the 5 years that came before, we had 4. We had Leogeist, and then in the 2nd or 3rd year we got Angel Lion, and then we got Onyxia and Sakura-Lisk. But yeah, 4 in 5 years, and then just in the last year we've got 2 more stun counters. And yeah, they're both very strong. One is access, everyone has access to in the shop. Pretty significant. And I think this screen as a whole, I'm really trying to sell the fact that they did push stun protection this year. It's something which the community was asking for in 2020 a lot. And throughout 2021, people were still complaining about stun. And I was trying to be a voice saying, look, we're getting all these powerful options. And yeah, there really are loads. So let's move to the top right, where there's conversion or send back. So these are monsters which, they do a slight mixture of things. So they kill a teammate or send back a teammate. And I omitted some from this because, say for example, Vixian can kill teammates, but she herself is not stun immune. So I only included these ones where they actually either create stun protection or they're stun immune themselves, so it's kind of more relevant fighting against stun. So yeah, I won't go through each of them, but they all either they basically save teammates from stun, and that is another cool aspect of stun protection. Is sometimes you don't have one of these stun absorbers that just absorbs it all. Sometimes you have one which it's kind of like it does something else and then it passively can deal with when you've been stunned, and that's what all those 5 monsters do. Then we go down to the unique category. So similarly here, Jawshank and Griff King, similarly to Dasikian, Jawshank and Griff King were already in the game. However, Griff King got Stun Converter this year, which means it's actually really strong stun protection. Because it shields itself, it can be quite difficult to deal with. If they've got these stuns from like revenges or entrances or whatever, they can't stop themselves from stunning Griff King, and so the rest of the team will get stunned, but Griff King can then give turn to them because it instantly gets a turn, and it's got this dual give turn. So very nice stun protection. I haven't tested it out myself that much, but I have faced it a bit, so I know people are using it and finding it good. Jawshank, it now enters with Roaring Entrance and can give turn to a teammate that's been stunned beyond 200 seconds. So it's a way to save yourself if you've been stun locked. It's a weaker version of Nightingale, which you also see there. I went on about Nightingale when we saw it, about how its primary use is saving you from a stun lock. Jawshank can do that a bit too. There are combos with it. It can be useful with a stun absorber. Like say for example, if we look all the way over to the top left, we've got Garden Fairy Jasmine. It's a monster that you want to get turns, and it can be stunned out of play. So you could play Jawshank a few monsters behind, so if it gets stunned out of play, you can give turn to it again. And then we got Spectre Fox. I put this in the unique category rather than Stun Absorber because it revives itself when it dies. And this has been kind of the main reason why Spectre Fox has seen the most play out of any monster from this entire year in PvP. It gets used loads because it's very easy to just shove in a team, got decent killing moves, and then when it dies it will revive itself, so it's kind of stun protection for like half your team or so if you have it in the front line. It just protects where it is and also behind a lot. Not the best protection because it does just get stunned out of play, but it's very reliable protection. So yeah, that's stun protection from this year. There are loads of monsters which they added and also changed to be stun protection in a number of different ways. I think we now have ample ways of protecting ourselves from stun. What I would like to see in the future is more kind of like stun bisectors, or things which then have niche cases where you want to use them, so you build around them, or you only use them in certain archetypes, that kind of stuff. I think that would be great to see now that they're definitely getting stun protection right. Like, the early days of the game, they had stun absorbers not working particularly well, but now they have them and loads of other options that stun is now properly handled, I think. This next slide is covering something which I actually looked at in the Earth video, but here I just wanted to talk about kind of rounding off what kind of support each element got this year. So we looked at this table in the Earth video, and mainly I wanted to highlight how there are a lot of standard defense monsters and slow monsters. If you look at the total numbers along the bottom, you'll see those are the two which really stand out as the most. And we saw at the beginning of this video that the average is very much more lower defense monsters. So to see a lot of standard defense monsters is definitely unique. That is definitely the way things are going. So in terms of the elements, also I wanted to point out the Earth. I mentioned how we didn't get any fast or very fast monsters. You can see it more clearly here in this table. I'm only talking about the Legendaries and Mythics in this. I realised I might have been slightly unclear in the Earth video because I said that, and then I looked at Joker Dragon and Spectre Fox, and those are fast monsters, but those were super epics, and this table isn't covering those. So clearly, Fire and Shadow got the most support. They got the most monsters. The 5.5 and the 8+1, that's talking about the 0.5 being the monster shared with another element, and Fire had 2 monsters like that, so they actually had 10 monsters, just the same as Shadow. Those two elements, not only did they get the most monsters, they also got the highest support. So if you look at my bullet points here, the new additions bullet point, what this is talking about is what I think the power level is of the new monsters that came out by element. So I think Fire had the strongest monsters that came out this year. They were just really, really good, as I'm sure you'd agree if you watched that video. And then next was Shadow. I think Shadow got a lot of interesting and unique additions, doing some very powerful things. Yeah, those two just really stood out to me. Water I thought was next most. We've just seen this video and I raved about a bunch of monsters. I think they got some really powerful additions like, you know, Christine as an amazing sweeper, Shark Rex I also loved. I'm not going to list them all off, but Earth I thought was the next most, mainly in the super epics, just got some really good super epics there, and yeah, a couple of good legendaries. Next was Holy. It's a little sad, all 3 years that I've done this video series, Holy hasn't had the greatest support, but it did get at least a couple of really powerful monsters. Momo and Garden Fairy Jasmine were big standouts. And then lastly, Storm. There were a couple of monsters in there which I did like, Nikki and Hannery, which perhaps I've been a little harsh on in their tier list ranking, but they just don't stand out as like overpowered to me. Yeah, nothing too exciting in Storm this year, but some relatively okay monsters that came out in it. So that's how I'd order them. However, where I think Link stands at the moment. So this is specifically talking about Link PvP teams. I think that Storm is still the best. It was the best last year. Fire's had loads of support here, but I still think Storm just has so much in the realms of like control from the stun. It's got tanky monsters. It's got some sleep in there. It's got easy ways to kill things. It can just do basically everything that you want in PvP. Stun protection is very easy to get. Yeah, it just, I think, is the strongest. We had a special rule in PvP recently, which I mentioned in the Storm video, where we had to use 10 monsters of the same element, and Storm was by far the most popular in that. and it's no surprise really. So next I would say fire and water are actually the same now. Previously it was water, but fire has had so much link support. People would probably think like fire should be above water. I still think water adds a lot in the realms of control. With the sleep and the stealth and other stuff that water does, it just can win battles very effectively. Whereas fire, it's kind of like, if it gets going, it is brutal and it really tears through an enemy team. But it can kind of stutter a little bit. It doesn't have too much in terms of control. So I think the two of them are fairly even at the moment. Next, I would say Earth and Holy are actually even. It's funny because a few years ago Holy used to be the best, and then here it is in like tied in 4th and 5th. Yeah, Earth got some great support previously. Link Earth is kind of getting there. Holy is kind of not really getting much more for it. So the two of them are just a bit behind really on things, not as strong as the big three. And then finally Shadow. Shadow is great in PvE. Not really so much Link Shadow, but like just Shadow monsters in general. But Link Shadow in PvP doesn't have much going for it. There's a few specific frontline setups, but trying to do actually a Link Shadow team or like something other than those specific setups, Shadow doesn't have much to offer. I would actually quite like to see Link Shadow pushed a bit more in PvP. We've got obviously great Shadow monsters for PvE, but I think that a bit of a push for Link in PvP would be nice. This final slide we've been building up to over the course of the series, I decided to put all those tables that I've been showing at the end of the videos into one massive table. So this is where I kind of generally rank the monsters from 2021. Bear in mind, this is all very subjective. Some of these, they are done like just after the release of them. Like, this is just a snapshot. Everything will move. It will be, you know, different over time. But it's an example of where I'd put all the monsters. And so you may want to go to watch this video on a laptop, so you can actually see the pictures properly, or otherwise I will post this in my thread on the forum, along with the 6 videos from this year's series. I'll post this image at the bottom, so there'll be a link to that in the description if you want to go look at it there, and now you can zoom in and all the rest of it. Yeah, so I'm going to be going through some of these bullet points and just talking about this, and then lastly I'm going to pick out, you know, my highlights from the year, the monsters I think are the most powerful, given by my tier list, which they're all independently done, so it's not like I've purposefully put them in a certain order. But anyway, so the clearest thing from this is that there is a diagonal line going from the bottom left to the top right. Oh, I should say the table. The tiers are the rows, so S+ up at the top, all the way down to F at the bottom, and the columns across the top are Mythics in PvE, then PvP, then the Legendaries in PvE, then PvP, then the Super Epics, and then finally the Epics in PvE. So, yeah. Going across, you'll see there's a quite definite diagonal line. Now, I will say this is to be expected because there's a lot of Super Epics, especially from the base game, which are just not very good. So, generally speaking, we tend to get higher Super Epics, like Super Epics in the higher tiers. And with the Legendaries, that's kind of similar. We've got a lot of weaker Legendaries from years ago that kind of bulk up the lower tiers, so the Legendaries get boosted up a little bit. But even so, this is more distinctive than you'd expect. I mean, look at the Mythics in PvE. My god, B is the average, and there's like barely anything above there. Most of them are below there. Now, Mythics, they are mostly designed for PvP. Like, the new ones they come out, they're trying to sell them for people who do PvP. But I did not like the Mythics this year for PvE, by the looks of it. And then when it comes to PvP, they're very average. I wrote here just about average. I can't remember the exact number, whether there's... I think there may even be the same number above as below. So Mythics, I was expecting them to be kind of pushing power level with time. And so you'd expect them to be slightly above average. However, they're bang on average, which is, yeah, slightly surprising. Then you look at Legendaries, they're about average as well in PvE, but then PvP, they are A to S tier, which, bear in mind, anything sort of A tier or above, I would say is definitely strong in PvP, very viable. Obviously the S tiers are slightly better, but A is there, like A monsters can be played and feel very good as well. And then we look at the super epics, and we've got some great super epics, especially in PvP. That S plus category, you've got 7 in there. Yeah, a lot of like PvP super epics from this year. In fact, 2 of those are crystal worms. So basically, the crystal worms are up there as a good cycle from the year. So what to really gather from this? Well, something that crossed my mind throughout the year, and definitely when looking at this table, is that were the legendaries which came out this year actually as good as the mythics? Because the mythics clearly aren't being pushed in power level, and the legendaries, we are getting, like, there's quite a few S and S minus in PvP legendaries there, which, bear in mind, I do everything as a bell curve. So there are fewer S plus and S monsters than there are in the sort of A and B category. So the fact that I put 5 into S is pretty significant. So there's a lot of very powerful legendaries coming out, and I think ultimately it's definitely an interesting thing to discuss. Unfortunately, I don't have anyone here to discuss it with, but I think that there are a lot of legendaries which are actually pretty similar power to the mythics which they're bringing out. There are definitely standout mythics which are above that, and you know, mythics are generally stronger, but in terms of the new legendaries they're bringing out, they're definitely bringing out quite a few that are very strong, and that, you know, the fact that they're legendaries rather than mythics doesn't actually matter that much because they're similar power level, which I think is a great testament to the developers. When mythics originally came out, there were a bunch of people who left the game because they were like, oh, this has become pay to win, these mythics are just going to be so overpowered, like they can beat all the legendaries, it will be all about the mythics. And they've done a really good job, especially this year, I think, where they brought out the Fortune Shrine, so now mythics are actually feasible for free players to get, and the mythics aren't basically too much more powerful than the legendaries. Now, when you face the top mythics, you definitely notice, like, yes, they are more powerful than the legendaries, but generally speaking, I think they're doing a great job of there being just a small notch of power above, where it doesn't feel like your legendaries are just unplayable because the mythics are too strong. So yeah, that's basically what I wanted to say on that. Otherwise, I mentioned stun protection here. We've already looked at the stun protection slide. There was a lot of great stun protection, especially in super epics, so I was very happy to see that. So I think in terms of design, they're doing an amazing job. I'm really happy with everything I see. So yeah, the last thing to say on this slide is let's have a look at some of the monsters which I rated at the top. So my favourite mythics for PvE looks like it was Botan Duji, Momo, Grimoris, and Christine. These are the standouts. So Christine is just, you know, great sweeper. Botan Duji is tanky sweeper. Momo is just blah, and Grimoris is yeah, like a sort of cool build around type control sweeper thing. Those monsters are actually very similar when you look at the Mythics PvP column. So Momo is basically just a big standout, and Christine up there too. Botan Duji and Grimoris, you can see they're in the sort of S as well. Basically, Lyra is the only one that comes up into S category for PvP that wasn't in PvE. So those are probably my top 5 mythics from this year. Those 5 that you see in the Mythics PvP category. Then when we look at legendaries, my favourite legendaries, by the looks of it, the Garden Fairies, 3 of them I really like. The Earth, the Holy, and the Shadow, I think they're up there very high. Magmagund is amazing in Link Fire. Pitiagon, amazing in both Link Earth and Link Fire. Lunactia, pretty broken in PvP. And then you've got Mantiferno, who I'm not sure exactly where he's going in PvP, but he's certainly up there. Mantiferno and Dolfariel, you can see I've got in the sort of S categories for both. Yeah, those are my favourite legendaries from the year. What I think is the most powerful. Sorry, favourite and most powerful, different. I meant most powerful. Yeah, and then the super epics, I'm not going to go through them, but the crystal worms and the other ones, a couple of earth ones there that are very good up at the top. So yeah, those are my top picks from the year, and that will be it for this video. So I hope you enjoyed watching this video and this whole series. I know that for some people these videos were quite long. I'm not sure exactly if I'm going to be able to make them a bit shorter next year. Maybe I'll be a bit more concise on some things. Otherwise, for this year, what I'm generally going to be doing is making guide videos. That's very much what I enjoy doing, and I'm going to be more busy with some other stuff in my life, so I won't be able to necessarily bring out general content. So I want to focus in on the things which I really want to make, and sharing information and tips and useful stuff, or trying to make people enjoy the game more is what I'm all about. So I'm going to try and focus on that some more. And yeah, otherwise, I hope you enjoyed this. Any tips or feedback about this series or requests for videos, do let me know. Otherwise, I'd love to hear what your favourite monsters were from the year. Either what you think are the most powerful, where you think maybe I've misjudged some, or just otherwise your favourite ones from the year that have come out. And yeah, that's it from me. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in a video soon.